Welcome to Bricks and Banter, the podcast that brings you the latest insights and advice on all things real estate.
Welcome to Bricks and Banter. I'm your host, Scott Roy, with my co-host, Dylan Cherry. Today, talking about real estate as a career.
Yeah, so today I think the main goal of this episode is we want to just try to shed some light on the process of getting into real estate, right? Whether that's somebody who's doing this a first career, a second career, a fifth career, right? We want to just kind of, break down, not necessarily the cost associated, but we want to just go through really the process as a whole, right?
Okay, sounds good. So let me start with asking you the question. You considered real estate. Why consider real estate?
Well, I think to be very honest, I think almost everybody that gets into real estate would say is, I saw the aspect of, there's a huge potential to, earn some good money there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But for me too, we talked about it a little bit before was, all I really did other than play soccer was I worked in restaurants, at a young age, right? So that was my only real, job experience or career, we can say, right? So
yeah.
For me, it was just something that was, I had a lot of people tell me I'd be, I'm good at sales, or I should be, selling cars or houses or something bigger than, steaks on the menu, right? So for me, it was just, I just recognized that, okay, I'm young, I am very entrepreneurial in how I think and, my way of life really up to that point. So I think the initial pull would have been the financial side of it, right? Which I don't think is that uncommon.
It can seem very glamorous, I guess, right?
Yeah, and it is at times, right? But it's also, there's a whole other world to it that doesn't get talked about too often, right?
Right. So you weren't afraid of the hours, you weren't afraid of any of that other stuff coming into it?
I was just hungry and ready to get her going,
Yeah. I wonder if that's a demographic thing, because you and I are similar in our business styles, but we're not similar in age. I.e., you're considerably younger than I am.
Yeah, but at the same time, we're very similar in who we are, right? And I think we're going to keep talking about that. We've already talked about it on here. We talk about it amongst ourselves all the time.
It was actually probably one of the good reasons why we started the podcast.
Yeah,
because we are similar.
Yeah,
we have our differences every once in a while, but they're constructive differences.
Yeah, and they're good to have, right?
Did you ever think of the competitive nature of the industry?
Oh yeah, that's one of the. In fact, if I was to be scared or fearful of something, it was probably that, because as you know, right, we're where we live is a very saturated area for realtors. There's, so many, it's almost, it's like everybody knows 15 realtors, right? Yeah. And, even for me, right, coming up on 7 years, right, in the business, even back then it was the same thing. Maybe the numbers weren't so great, but I mean, there's a certain chunk of people who are, kind of controlling the market, right?
Yeah.
So there was a bit of fear, but I think, I took my mindset of just, being an athlete and just, the kind of grind that you sell yourself, at a young age, that if you put the time in, you put in the effort, you do your role, you can succeed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there was definitely a bit of that, but I just knew in my heart of hearts that if I work as hard as I possibly can and I just do the right things that I'm being told to do from our leadership team here at the brokerage and people like yourself, I had very high confidence in myself. But I think that's a testament to who I am as an individual, right?
Yeah, and I think that's why we also connect too, is that we are similar in our styles.
Yeah.
Are similar in our work ethics, our mannerisms, you've covered for me when I'm on vacation and likewise.
Yeah.
The hours though, the hours are long, are they not?
Well, I think it's different for everybody, right? Everybody has their own ways of working. And I think that's a big point to touch on is you're an entrepreneur when you get into this business. You work for yourself, unless you go, the avenue of exploring a team or, working with a partner or under someone else or whatever the case is. I think you have to be prepared for, long hours, and whether you're, working 12-hour days or 14-hour days, or you're working 4-hour days, I think it's a matter of, what works for you. But at the same time, evenings and weekends, you can't be not working on those, or you're simply just not going to do anything. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. The weekend work is something that's tough, or can be tough.
Yeah.
I think that's where you and I slightly differ in that, for me, it's family.
Exactly.
You're not at that stage yet.
No, I'm still in the spend the time, grind, hustle, make that money, right? But no, so we also have different ways of getting in, right? So when I got in the business, I was young, I was working in restaurants, I didn't have much, let's say, life experience. Where for yourself, right, it was a second career, right? So maybe you can touch on a few of the things that kind of crossed your mind when you were making that jump, because I think it's a big jump, right? I think there's
it's a massive jump.
Yeah.
I was terrified.
Yeah, naturally. You're giving up a paycheck, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, you come from a corporate world, and depending on where you come from, you may have, an expense account, you have your salary, you might have a car allowance. if you're on the sales side of it. I mean, if
Yeah.
you're just coming from the corporate side, then you might be giving up a massive salary with benefits. I do remember driving back from my interview, and it was rather unsettling because I walked away from my benefits plan, and when you've
Yeah.
got 3 kids, it's tough,
It's huge.
right? Because now all of a
Yeah.
sudden everything falls squarely on your shoulder. So it's not a decision made lightly
Yeah.
coming into it. But yeah, I did come from a sales background.
Yeah.
So
So
I
you had a bit
had
of that.
I have to go back and double check and do the math, and I'm not going to do it now, but it was
Yeah.
probably close to 10 years in customer service and sales in the graphic communications industry.
Yeah.
And then moving to this, it was like the sales part wasn't difficult. I'll tell you, that wasn't the hard part. The hard part was adjusting to the hours, the competitive nature. You're self-employed.
Yeah.
I mean, even though we all work at the same brokerage, that's a unique understanding, is that we're still self-employed individuals
Yeah.
within the brokerage itself. And the hours were tricky. At first, coming home at 10:30, 11, 1 o'clock in the morning. Because when I first started, I go back 13 years. I mean, I was catching the end of one wave and moving into another,
Yeah.
and where we are still face to face, belly to belly, doing a lot of the transactions and paperwork. So by the time you got everything done, yeah, you were strolling home at 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning some nights.
Yeah. And that's also different times in terms of technology, right? You didn't have the
Right.
e-signatures and just everything that we have, the
Exactly.
luxury of having today, right?
Exactly. So you've never regretted for a moment coming into the real estate industry?
No, like, maybe there've been a couple points where I'm just kind of like,
Yeah.
down on my luck and like, feeling bad for myself. But
Yeah.
I think that's human nature to begin with. And, for
Yeah.
me, I just, sometimes I just have to shake myself off a little bit and,
Yeah.
kind of regroup. But, it's just a testament to the business, right? Like, as we haven't fully touched on yet, but yes, it can be glamorous, it can be great.
Yeah.
But, there are going to be some periods where maybe you're not doing as much business. Maybe you're still working a lot. You're not
Yeah.
just sitting at home doing nothing. You're still putting in the time, but you're not quite seeing the paycheck, right?
Yeah.
So,
I guess the very obvious outward one is you see the sign on the lawn, right? And throughout the neighborhood. So you automatically assume if you see 2 or 3 signs, that person is extremely busy. And
Oh,
they
yeah.
probably are. But there's a whole underlying it. Like if you're working with a buyer, you're working just as hard. You
Oh,
just
yeah.
don't have your sign on someone's yard.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? You make somebody could do 10 deals for their buyers, in 1
Yeah.
week, but if there's no sign on the
Yeah.
lawn, nobody really knows about it, right? And
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
and that's part of it too. But social media and the world that we live in today is a lot different because as you and I both know, right? There's a fine line on the social media world with realtors in general, right?
That is a whole other topic for another day.
Yeah.
I think I'll make note of that one. Is you could talk about social media and real estate
Yeah.
for days.
Oh yeah. So
and-
let's circle back. Let's
Yeah.
start talking. Let's get back on track with what we're what we're trying to get to here. So
For sure.
let's just say like I want to ask you. So if you had somebody that walked into the room right now and they were
Mhm.
they were in a career they had been in for maybe 5 years, 20 years, whatever it is, and they're contemplating let's make that change into real estate. What would be maybe something that some like simple piece of advice you could give them right off the bat? Like what would be something they need to consider heavily to make that switch?
This industry is different than having a job in that you only get out of this industry what you put into it.
Yes.
And one of our seasoned reps, when I joined, shared that little tidbit of information with me. And as easy as it is to take that in, it's hard to employ, right? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, I only get out what I put into this, and I'm working hard. So you can't just put a lot of effort into it. It has to be good effort.
Yeah. Well, I think
Right.
a lot of people, in general, people do this, but I think in real estate, a lot of people like to get busy being busy.
Yeah.
Right. They're just kind of keeping them doing something. I got this.
Oh,
I'm
I've got
going
an
for
appointment.
coffee.
I've got this. Yeah.
I got lunch with
Yeah.
Tommy, whatever,
I talked to 10 people today. I'm
Exactly.
extremely busy.
I've done my work for the day. I had 10
Yeah.
conversations, right? Where let's
Yeah.
be honest, like there's certain things that we do. Everyone's different because we all have different activities that we do and
Right.
and different forms of generating leads and new clients, right?
And that's probably the tougher one. And thanks for redirecting me there, because I think I
Yeah.
went sideways a little bit on that
That's
one.
how it's going
But
to go for the first little while here, right?
lead generation is tough, and it doesn't matter what industry you're in.
Yeah.
Although this one is unique in its own, because again, you're calling on individuals. You're maybe working with family member or friends, and we'll have to edit these little sounds out
Yeah,
later
that's
on.
all right.
But you're tapping into your network, your sphere of influence of people that you know.
Yeah.
Because it is tough. I mean, I think about the times I came to, around our brokerage or around where I live. How do people know I was in real estate all of a sudden? You got to get out and talk to these people,
Oh yeah.
right? So what are the ways that you get out and talk to people? Well, you can do an open house. You can get on the phone and start dialing, and that's tricky in itself.
I think cold calling in itself is a skill set, right?
Yeah.
Certain people are unbelievable at it. Like,
Yeah.
we have some guys at the brokerage, people, who are just, it's like all of their business comes from it.
Oh, they're lights out.
But then we have others, like for me, myself, like I spent, probably a few months in my first, first couple of years, we'll say, maybe a few months collectively of doing cold calling. And I got one listing out of it, and, it was great and everything was good. But for me, I just found it that it wasn't something that I wanted to spend time every day doing, right? Like, not that anyone wants to cold call, but I mean, I found other activities like open houses and door knocking, things like that, where I was face to face, belly to belly, like you said.
Yeah.
Whereas, am I good on the phone? Sure. But did I want to spend the time learning scripts and, going through this and spending it every single day? For me, it just wasn't something I enjoyed. Right.
Yeah.
So not that you have to enjoy every bit of work you do. I just mean, I found other things that gave me more business, and I could see that happening in front of my face. Right.
Yeah. And I think that's effectiveness.
Exactly.
Right. If you're effective at something, then it's very good.
Definitely.
It's not time consuming if you're effective at it. I personally don't like cold calling. I would sit and door knock thousands of houses before I would pick up the phone.
Yeah.
It's just that fear of rejection on the phone.
Yeah, it gets you.
And here's something that I learned really easily. When you knock on a door and someone answers the door, you can be very concise about it. Yeah. Your language is very quick. Are they considering making a move? No, you can move on, right? Oh, yeah. No one has ever slammed the door in my face, but I've been hung up on.
You must not have.
Numerous times.
I feel like you didn't knock on many doors then, my friend.
Thousands, actually.
Yeah.
It's how I built a lot of my business initially, was door knocking.
That's good. Then that means you got something about you. People don't want to slam the door in your face, so that's good.
No, I think if you're respectful, yeah, I think if you're respectful and you're not, because you don't know what's going on the other side of the door.
It's like, it could be anything.
Right? And it's the same thing as calling. Someone gets annoyed with you for interrupting their day, because you're taking them away from their task.
Big time.
Right. And 13 years ago, not a lot of people work from home. Now, I would say probably 40 to 50% of people do work from home. So when you knock on the door or you call them, they're in the middle of a Zoom call, they're in the middle of a meeting, they're talking to their manager.
Kids are crying.
Yeah, exactly. Barking, so you are interrupting their day. You're taking them away from what they were doing.
Yeah.
And even if it's not work, let's say they're just sitting down, they've got the first 10 minutes to relax. And you show up and knock on the door, or the phone rings. It's like, I just sat down.
Just quickly, as you're saying that, I think there's also a difference in, so if you're cold calling or door knocking, you are interrupting someone's day, right? So I think that the benefit, maybe if you don't like the rejection or whatever, the benefit of door knocking is that you can kind of read the room, right? Like I've had times where, a lady answers the door, and like I just said, like the one, she's holding her young child over her shoulder, the kid's crying, the phone's ringing, and it's just kind of like, you can kind of read the room and go, you know what, like, have a great rest of your day. I'm going to move to the next one.
My mistake. I'm sorry.
Whereas on the phone, right? Like if you're not, really well equipped with different, different phrases if someone says something, or different ways to deal with rejection, like you can kind of just be getting hung up on, and then you're going to be really quickly getting back to doing something else, right?
Yeah.
So
the rejection can push you in a different direction.
Yeah.
So you got to stay focused on stuff, and you've got to be determined. To get those leads generated.
I think the other thing with door knocking, something that I really liked about it was, it's just the human interaction, right? Like you're face to face, and if you are new in the business, or you're it's something you're thinking about, if you get in the business, you're going to try door knocking, right? It's like, I think the more you do it, the better you're going to get. But not only are you going to improve door knocking, you're going to improve overall with dealing with people, right? And we deal with people every day of our lives. It's, I've said it, I'll keep saying it. People are our currency, right? It's literally, if without them, we will not earn any money. We have no listings. We have nothing, right?
Right.
So the more that you do things, like for me, when I worked in the restaurant, I really learned about myself a lot when I was kind of put into a position like that, because beforehand I was, yes, I played soccer many, many years. I was really good with teammates and all that, but I mean, I had never really professionally, other than working in kitchens and, people you're working with side by side, I had never really had a chance to kind of explore the possible skill set of dealing with people. Right. So that's kind of the point, I think, is that some people get too scared, they'd rather cold call because they don't want to go to the door, but then it's like, if they don't want to go to the door, they got a cold call, but they don't want to do the others. Right. So I guess the point is just, if it's uncomfortable for you, just do it. Right? Like you'll get better, deal with a bit of rejection, get better at it. Right?
Well, and I think too, is that you'll understand the same way that I did, right? Like neither one of them, I'll be honest with you, made me really happy. Like
Yeah.
nothing,
Oh yeah.
neither one of those got me out of bed in the morning. I was like,
Yeah.
woo,
Can't wait to go.
no,
Cold
let's
call.
go.
Yeah.
But I did find that, like you said, the door knocking was one where I was effective.
Yeah.
I was not effective on the phone.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah. And you have to realize that, and you have to be self-aware enough to say, I'm not very good at this.
Well, and see, that's the thing, right? Is like going back to getting busy, being busy, right? Like,
Yeah.
could you and I both, over the course of a couple of days, sit here and become really good cold callers? Sure, if we wanted to, right? But it
Yeah.
goes back to the effectiveness, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you can spend your time doing other activities that are clearly, tried and tested, they're proven already, you've made deals off of them, or whatever. Like, why wouldn't you spend your time
Yeah.
getting even better and improving your skill set?
Yeah.
That's being utilized in that
Yeah.
aspect, right?
Yeah. So when you were considering this, did you come at it from the perspective of, I'm going to hit the ground running, I'm going to start making money day one, and everything's going to be sunshine and roses? Did you have that?
I would say for maybe a split second, I
Yeah.
thought like that. But for me, it was, I might have already said it when we did our, our bio kind of intro episodes. But
Yeah.
Like when I first did my courses, I was, 20 years old. I had just turned 20. I had to do them. So I was very, very young. And the way that I saw it was, once I got licensed, which was when I was 22, I looked at it and said, okay, if I can survive 5 years, and I was really heavily emphasizing survive in my head. And, when I wrote this out and everything, if I can survive it, I'm going to be in this business for the rest of my days. That's how I looked at it, because I knew that I'm a very, I'm just a realist, like I don't like to be, I don't like when somebody tries to sell me, like I am one of those people. Like, am I good at selling? I like to think so, but I mean, at the same time, salesmen don't like to be sold. And if I feel like I'm just, if I'm just kind of making decisions based on an idea that this is going to be easy, I think I'm setting myself up for failure. So I actually took the opposite approach, and I almost tried to kind of scare myself a little bit and be like, listen, man, like you better be prepared to go to war every day, like every listing, everything is just going to be. So I kind of took it from that approach, and I'm not sure if it was because of my athletic background or what it was, but that was just my mindset. Is I wasn't really, too fearful. Like we talked about it a bit, obviously there's always going to be certain things that you're worry you and stuff, but no, I wasn't too kind of, I didn't have the rose colored glasses on, we'll say, right? I was very realistic with, this is going to be really difficult, and I want to make it out of 5 years. Right.
Yeah.
So like, how about you? Like, were you like how did that go for you?
I was definitely fearful, because you go from paycheck every week to nothing every week. Yeah. And how do you fill those gaps?
But like, in terms of it being sunshine and rainbows, did you ever have a moment of that where you were kind of like, oh, this will be really easy?
Oh, I thought it was all glamorous.
Yeah.
I thought, you get your license and you just start printing money.
Yeah.
Like this is the way to do it.
Yeah.
And that's not the case. Right. Mm-hmm. So you do have those moments in time where you get both. You get extreme highs.
Oh yeah.
And you get the extreme lows. What you're doing is, when you're way up high, throw enough in the valley so the fall isn't so far.
Oh, there you go. That's pretty good. Soften the landing a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. Because when it's low, it can be very low.
Or it can be dark. And,
a lot of people will get into that funk where it's like, oh, nothing's going right. This is wrong. They don't like me. They chose somebody else, or this person, I don't know what it is I did wrong. I wore the wrong color suit or something like that. You start questioning everything about yourself.
And you play the victim, right? Like, to a lot of things.
Oh yeah. And you can talk yourself into a pretty good spiral.
Oh yeah.
What you have to realize, and I think you and I both have, is that there are clients for everybody. There's realtors for everybody. You know full well that I connect really well with some of your clients. You connect well with some of my clients. When we cover each other off, you don't connect with everybody.
Oh yeah.
Right. And that's natural.
And you can't. That's just how it works.
No. Right. That's why, different brands fill different needs for various people. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If that was the case, we'd all drive the same vehicle.
Oh yeah, we'd all be a bunch of robots, right?
Right. So people have different interactions, and again, you're going to come back, and we're going to find that we're going to circle back to this point quite a bit.
Definitely.
Is that there's something for everybody, right? Yeah. It's a people industry.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like that's what I was just going to say, is that I think that's one thing that I started to pick up on while I was doing my courses, right? Because once again, right, like, I was just the kid in the room. Everybody was just kids. At that point too, there wasn't as many young people doing it as there are now, right? So I think I was the only person under the age of 30, in all honesty.
Yeah.
And I was kind of looking around. I'm kind of thinking like, okay, the instructor, this is what she looks like and sounds like. Okay, that guy, like, so you kind of like, for me, I kind of just started to realize, like, you know what, like, realtors do come in all shapes and sizes, right? Like they're
Right.
not all like, supermodels, or like, they drive an Audi or a really big, you know what I mean? Like, it's like
Yeah.
there is literally a market for everyone. And I think too many people,
Right.
especially now, right? Like today's day and age, Instagram, TikTok, everything on social media, like everybody is
Yeah.
obsessed with comparing themselves to other people. And I think
Yeah.
that's a big thing, is that, if I'm looking at you and I'm saying, oh, Scott's doing all these deals, like, why am I not doing it? Like, as you said, I'm going to talk myself into a spiral.
Yeah.
If I go to an open house and I'm obsessed with